Ice Shot is one of my favorite skills in PoE 1, so of course I had to play it in PoE 2. This build is fast, simple, fun, easy to play, all of my favorite things, so let's dive in and talk about it. So let's talk about my likes and dislikes for this build. Number 1, I absolutely love the one button click full screen clear. It's incredibly satisfying. We have big Herald of Ice explosions, lots of chains off of terrain. The build just feels really satisfying to clear with. Now, while our boss damage is not the most insane, it is a very satisfying way to play bosses. You hit barrage, fire a flurry of ice shot arrows, and then while your barrage is down, you put up frost walls to enable shotgunning on bosses. What happens is when you put a frost wall down in front of an enemy and you fire at that enemy, it will hit the frost wall first, causing it to explode, and then all of these secondary projectiles of ice shot will fire at the enemy. Many of them will hit. The frost wall also acts as a defensive layer because monsters can't hit you through them, so they either have to break them down or go around them. A lot of times when I start an expedition or a breach, I will put down the walls ahead of time and then just fire through them in every direction and everything gets cleared. Another thing I really like about this build is the defensive shell. If you're going to play on the right side of the tree, you don't have a ton of options. So some cheap investment into energy shield and a high evasion alongside of acrobatics is my current favorite set of defensive layers. Acrobatics means you can avoid damage from all hits when you evade, not just strikes or projectiles. So detonate dead, boss slams, all of that can be avoided with acro. Then you have a bunch of cheap energy shield through subterfuge mask, and then you just grab a helmet and a chest that have some ES, add Grim Feast, and you can have easily well over 1000 ES. I find that the energy shield is a nice layer for one-shots. It doesn't really help you in pretty intense combat where you're getting overrun by lots of enemies, but with Ice Shot, that doesn't happen very often. Keeping enemies at bay with frost walls, as well as freezing and shattering them, is a great way to not need a ton of defense. So let's dive in and talk about the build. All right, here we have the level 90 Deadeye. As you can see, we did get res cap, but we are only at 24 chaos res. I find chaos res to be very frustrating in this game, and I regularly play characters that are not capped. So 2400 life, 700 ES. With Grim Feast, this can double up to 1500. We are almost to level 91. I will probably continue to play this character a bit because one of the other rerolls that I had planned is built around a bugged chest. So I cannot use it until that's fixed. So we'll see what we do. Stop by my stream if you want to see what I'm playing, twitch.tv/AER0__. I'm live every single day and you can get an early access look at what I'm working on. So for the build, basically you want to get a really high fizz DPS bow with one additional arrow. We're going to get the other one from Deadeye. This bow has chain on it, which is very strong, but not necessary. The next thing you want is proj skills. The more gem levels you have, the more damage you have, but also the more mana costs, so keep that in mind. For the helmet, you're looking for as much evasion and ES as you can get on a hybrid base, and then life and resistances. The quiver, I was able to buy this for 40x. With chain on it, you're not going to be able to find one of these for cheap, but basically you want flat damage, fizz, or cold, damage with bow skills, plus proj skills, and then anything else you can find that's useful. The arrow speed base does work with this note on the tree here, feathered fletching, so this is a very good base. Boots are just move speed, stats, life, res, pretty much the same thing for my rings, but you can get flat fizz and cold on the rings if you can afford it. The chest is basically the best evasion and ES body armor you can buy. I love the scalper's jacket because it has move speed on it. I got pretty lucky. I bought this with an open prefix and was able to slam on some extra evasion and ES. But buy whatever you can afford here. Belt is just going to be charm slot, life, resistances, and you want to get some mana. You can get mana a lot of different places, but you definitely need to get some. Gloves, these are not mandatory. I really like the idea of decimating strike. It makes bossing feel a lot better, but you can just get a really good pair of gloves, get some more life here, get some more evasion, ES, some attack speed as a suffix, and it'll help round out your resistances a little bit more. Lastly, you want to get a little bit of spirit. I think you only need 30 spirit to have all of the auras that I have, but on top of that, you want to get evasion, any stats resist that you need, obviously life, and I'm using Ricochet. This gives more chain off of terrain, a little bit more damage. This is pretty cheap to put on. All right, so we're going to talk about the gems. Basically, everything's listed in the MAXROLL planner below, so the gems are listed there in order of importance, so we'll talk about the things that I think are important. Frostwall, you use Spell Cascade in order to get more Frostwalls out. This puts more of ice between you and the enemy, and more walls for you to hit on the way to the enemy for more shotguns. Stormcaller Arrow, you get a big shock from this, so we use Execrate for more chance, Overcharge for more magnitude, and then Lightning Pen just makes it hit a little bit harder. Barrage, we use Premeditation to give more damage to all of the hits from the barrage. Perpetual Charge, so we have our charges up more often. And Ingenuity to decrease the cooldown. Hypothermia is self-cast, so we support it with links that make it easier to cast. And then we have our auras. Herald of Ice, Magnified Effect, Ellie Focus, and Long Shot. I'm pretty sure Herald of Ice cannot freeze, so Ellie Focus doesn't really have a downside. We want more Area of Effect from this because we don't really scale any AoE in the build. And then long shot just gives us some damage on the farther away enemies. You can also add things like +1 to cold skills in here to make this hit a little bit harder. Combat Frenzy generates us frenzy charges when we freeze enemies, so we use Perfusion to give us a chance for an extra charge. The cooldown of Barrage is long enough where it feels like we generally have frenzy charges up when we get there, so the setup feels pretty nice. Wind Dancer, we have linked to Clarity and Blind. Blind blinds every enemy that we hit with Wind Dancer, so when it goes off, when you get hit by an attack, all of the enemies around you get blinded, which is really, really nice for the next potential incoming attack. Don't forget the quality on this, it gives you +1 stage. Clarity we are running because mana is a problem on every single build. Lastly, Grim Feast. This is super important. We have a ES pool of 768. With Grim Feast, when we run over the remnants, and again, quality on this makes you pick up more ES, you can double this pool pretty quickly. So 70 ES per remnant. This is super helpful while mapping. You're basically just running over them. You don't have to try to pick them up. We'll double this ES pool to almost 1600. You basically run it at the level that you can afford. However much int you have, that's what you level it to. You can swap this out on bosses for Ghost Dance, which will give you ES back when you get hit, because you can't kill mobs and bosses usually. But that's up to you. I don't usually waste my time. As far as the tree goes, don't switch into acrobatics until you have at least 12 to 15,000 evasion, in my opinion. But in the end game, we have an absolute ton of evasion. So you can see here, evasion's at 72%, but in combat that actually goes up. Tailwind gives us evasion. I believe dodge rolling gives us evasion. So we're at 78% chance to dodge all hits, which is very, very strong. That doesn't include blind. We get blind from blinding strike. I don't know the exact calculation. I imagine blind is going to send us to somewhere in the low to mid 80s for evasion. You can also invest into blind effect. This doesn't show up on the stat sheet, but it is very, very strong. Definitely get blind in your build if you're playing aggro. Jewels are incredibly expensive if you want to get bonuses from Equip Quiver. I don't necessarily recommend going for that, but if you want to try to get that +2 doubled, you can take the quiver points here and get 20% on this. I crafted this myself, got very lucky, but they're very expensive to buy. Things that you want: evasion, proj damage, chain off of terrain is super good, attack speed with bows. You can get mana on kill. There are a ton of options for our jewels. And then the tree is pretty straightforward. We're just grabbing as much evasion and projectile damage as we can. We get some cold pen, and that's about it. I grab these move speed nodes when I'm in between clusters. So let's say I wanted to add a 3-point wheel. I would take the 2 move speed nodes as I level, and then I would unallocate them to take the 3-point wheel. These nodes are just really nice. A little bit of move speed always helps. For the Ascendancy, I don't love point blank, but it feels like I'm closer to enemies more often than far when I really need damage. Whether it's a hasted mana siphoner mob or a really big boss, I just simply find it easier to play closer to enemies than afar. We get +1 proj here. This is really nice to only need 1 proj on your bow to get to 3. 3 feels the best in my opinion. And then of course, Tailwind and Wind Ward. This is huge defense and huge speed. If you're leveling this, go for Gathering Winds first. There's no question, this is the best. All right, that's gonna be it for me. If you like this sort of content, make sure you like, subscribe, comment down below, hit the notification bell, all of the YouTube stuff. But most importantly, stop by my Twitch, twitch.tv/AER0__. Come over and drop that Twitch Prime, or just come by and say hi. Probably gonna be cooking up a new build soon, so come check that out. Appreciate you all for watching. And as always, take care.